has it been a good season regardless of whether we get in Europe or not? Let's get into it. Newcastle United finished 7th in the Premier League after a 4-2 win away at Brentford in the final game of the season, secured that 7th place spot ahead of Manchester United. We still have to wait to find out whether or not we'll be playing European football next season. We have to wait for the FA Cup final next week. Now, to be fair, 7th isn't what we wanted at the start of the season, but in the context of the season, it's actually not a bad position to be finishing in the end. I kind of wish we'd got 6th because it was there for us, but we didn't quite do it in the last week of the season. That loss at Manchester United really cost us dear in the end in that respect. But if we still get into the Conference League, then it can still be seen as a good season, I think. We got to 2 cup quarter-finals. We played in the Champions League for the first time in 20 years. And, there's lots and lots of positive things that we've seen throughout this season, in amongst some of the stuff that hasn't been quite as positive. The injuries this season completely wrecked our season in the middle of it. So December to kind of February was just a really, really tough time. That really has cost us. When you consider we've only finished 8 points behind Aston Villa in 4th, when you think about the points we've thrown away in some of those games when we were struggling by playing the same team week after week after week, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to think that next season we're going to be there or thereabouts again, I think, in terms of the 4th place, if we can keep our players fit. But let's just assume for a second that Manchester City do win the FA Cup next week. That will mean that we've had back-to-back seasons in a European competition. And okay, it's not the competition we wanted to be in, but if we get into the Conference League, then we can't turn our noses up at that. It is a sign of progress overall for the club that we have taken that step forward. If we think back to the 1990s when we first came up into the Premier League under Keegan, we finished 3rd in the first season back. We took the league by storm. We were absolutely brilliant. That was the original Entertainers team, and the following season we actually finished 6th, and that was obviously seen as a bit disappointing. However, the season after that was we then sort of regrouped, we went again, and we almost won the league. So to sort of have what appears to be a step back this season is kind of understandable, but also it's not the end of the world, because I feel like we've gained a lot of experience this season from lots of tough games. I mean, if we just look at our cup draws, really, really hard throughout everything, and we've sort of navigated them as best we can. We've gained a lot of experience from those Champions League games. Okay, we got knocked out of Europe, but we played 6 high-quality matches against 3 really good teams, and that, for the squad, is just a great gathering of experience to have, and I think that's going to be a really positive thing for next season, especially if we end up playing in a lesser European competition. Fingers crossed we get that. But there's been lots of other things this season that have been fantastic. So obviously finishing 7th, possible European back-to-back seasons, very big positive. Also, we've had just some amazing results this season. The standout one being Paris Saint-Germain at home, the 4-1 win. The crowd that night were just something else. It's up there in my top 3 Newcastle games of all time that I've attended. And when Miggy scored that first goal, the noise in St James's Park was just something else. Just to have those kind of nights back at Newcastle, something we haven't really truly had for such a long time, was just magical. And, let's hope we can get those kind of nights back again. We can look at some of the league results as well. Arsenal at home being another prime example of just a huge game where the crowd were on it, the team were on it, and we did really, really well. Another positive we've had this season is just scoring loads and loads of goals. We've scored over 100 goals this season, 85 in the league. That is the most league goals we've scored in the Premier League era. That's been a lot of fun. I said at the start of the season we would score loads and loads of goals, and I was absolutely right. This team did score loads and loads of goals. We scored 4 or more goals, I think it's something like 12 or 13 times this season. That is an unbelievable thing to be doing. The negative to that positive, I guess, is that we've conceded too many goals. And although there were injuries and we've got some excuses for that, the fact of the matter is we still conceded too many goals. And we need to look at how next season we can reduce the number of goals we concede. There's only the top 3 sides in the Premier League who scored more goals than us this season. If we're scoring that many goals and we're finishing 7th, that points to a problem with the defensive side of the game. For me, it's not just the defensive players as such that are an issue. It's kind of the central midfield has been a big problem for us. And that's linked to our pretty poor away form this season, in my opinion. We've struggled away from home in particular to kind of take control of games. I think that's why we've lost so many away games. So although we scored over 100 goals this season, which is amazing, we have to concede less next season. Another really positive thing for me is that we got to 2 cup quarterfinals. Now, we were obviously a penalty shootout away from a semi-final as well in one of those competitions, and that's very disappointing. But when you consider the draws we had as well, that's really good. For years and years and years, this is a club that rarely got out of the third round of any cup competition. It was a club that didn't want to win cups. It didn't want to compete in cups. So to be getting to quarterfinals regularly is just a brilliant thing. And I really believe that if we were in any other group in the Champions League, we probably would have gone through. So like we had really hard games. We played a team that are in the final, and we played a team that got to the semi-final, and AC Milan as well. So there's no shame in what we did in the Champions League. We got knocked out in the group stage, but it was literally probably one of the hardest groups that has ever existed in the Champions League, and we didn't embarrass ourselves. All the games we were in were close and tight, and with a bit of luck here and there, we might have actually got a few more points and got through. It's a very good learning curve for the players to have played those such high quality games. It's going to set us up well for the standards that we know we need to hit. I think kind of like the last thing I really wanted to say in this video is just like, although things haven't been perfect this season and there's issues with the away form and there have been a few grumbles about that, overall there's still very positive vibes around the club. Like, in spite of everything that's happened this season, everyone pretty much is still together. Eddie Howe is still being backed by the fans in the stadium, and there's lots of exciting things to come. Like the stadium plans will be announced at some point. We're going to have the new kit deal with Adidas come in, which is really exciting. There's going to be new players coming in the squad and some players leaving. And that kind of refresh of the squad, keeping things changing and moving, is exciting. And I think that there's just lots of good things that have happened this season. And it's very easy to dwell on the negative stuff, like all the away defeats and kind of dropping points to teams that we probably shouldn't be dropping points to, but this is the Premier League and this is what happens. But also kind of understanding the context of the injury situation we've had this season. And again, Eddie Howe is a little bit responsible for that, I believe. I think that his methods have been part of the problem, and I think that he now needs to prove to us next season that is something he's learning from, and can we play in a less intense way. I'm kind of glad this season's over in a way, because I feel like the second half of the season did at times feel like a bit of a drag and a bit of a chore, but ultimately we still had some amazing stuff happen, and I'm kind of really excited for next season. Even though, like, I'm glad this season's finished, I'm actually quite looking forward to next season already, because I just feel like it's time that we have a break, the club can reevaluate, readdress some issues, hopefully buy some players, hopefully keep some key players like Bruno and Isak, and then go again next season. And the aim next season, in my opinion, has to be Champions League qualification again and trying to win a trophy. It has to be that. And if we end up in the UEFA Conference League, I think that's 3 trophies that we could genuinely have a chance of winning next season. I'm not saying we're going to win all 3. If we could just win one, that'd be nice. But I feel like we could go for the FA Cup, we could go for the League Cup, and if we happen to get into the Conference League, that's a competition we are capable of winning. So it's exciting for next season, but there's a lot of work to be done as well, and I accept that. I just think overall it's been a really positive season. The club is still progressing in the right way. Yes, there's been setbacks this season, but if you look at any person or team or anyone in life who have achieved anything, they've always had bumps on the road. Nothing has ever gone plain sailing and smoothly, and I think we kind of need to remember that.